Have you ever heard of a CD-ROM game called Abandoned House? It's a rather interesting story for those who enjoy exploring obscure software, and was some kind of haunted house simulator that's been more or less forgotten, save for some forum posts on the last page results of a Google search. This is not a ghost story or anything like it, if you were wondering. At no time did any of the users I had been in contact with to ask them about their experiences with Abandoned House claim anything came out of the game and tried to hurt them. No one ever mentioned possession or anything of the sort. If you are interested, and search hard enough, you might actually be able to find the same forum posters I managed to track down, talking back and forth about their experiences with it, and their attempts to hunt for a copy. From what I can tell you, it was one of many bootleg shovelware discs shipped over from Eastern Europe that popped up on various gaming-centered personal websites and was shared through peer-to-peer web exchanges. What made Abandoned House so unique was its atmosphere and anomalies within the game files, and its near-complete obscurity, which made digging into the game's files so difficult. According to one of the users claiming to have actually had a copy of the jewel case the original came in, the cover was of a rather run-down house in a village. The picture was taken at some point near dusk before it became too dark to tell what was in the photo. The actual name of the game was written with marker on a piece of tape, placed on the back of the case, a lot like the old Michael Myers game for the Atari. The gameplay matched the case in terms of polish, with whatever engine running the game likely being a modded version of the early iterations of Doom. On running the startup file, the player would be brought to a splash screen containing the same house as what was on the cover, with unshadowed red text giving two options to select from: Start and Settings. There is no option for exiting, and at this point the player would be forced to either try to open the task manager or hard reset their computer to quit the game. When selecting Settings, the player is given an unreadable prompt of text with a slider underneath, and an option of Yes in the same red text at the bottom, the background of the house remaining at all times. Start immediately brings the player into the game without a transition to speak of. The game presents itself in 2.5 dimensions, with the environment being a very basic set of 3D walls. The textures themselves stood in stark contrast with the overly simplified 2.5D first-person perspective. Each texture in the game was a real-life photo of whatever they were meant to represent, probably taken with an early digital camera. At the corner of the screen was a very basic HUD containing only two elements: an inventory and a box labeled Soul. The inventory was standard, a black box with any items showing up in white text, but the Soul box feature was thought to be broken, simply being a blank stone-textured box titled Soul, which never changed during gameplay. The player would start outside on a patch of dirt, closed into a small property by a mess of tree sprites at roughly the same time as the picture on the title screen, though the house in front of them where they initially started didn't match in either layout or appearance. A path led from the tree line up through a small yard with patches of grass and up to the front door. The goal for the set number of levels was always the same: enter the house and find and open the locked door. After the key was found and used on the locked door, the player would immediately start again from the beginning with another door appearing somewhere else in the house. Each level was always the same, including the layout of the house up until the third and final level, which was impossible to complete. On each start, a key ring could be found underneath the mat below the front door. From there, the player would explore the house to find the locked door. When contacted, the posters in the threads related to Abandoned House, who were still active, reported different things about what was actually past the front door. Some said that the interior walls were bare cement block. Others said that there was green striped wallpaper, and some claimed there was a mix of both. Additionally, some said the living room just past the front door, the only room anyone claimed contained furniture other than a bed, had a table in the center of the floor. Others said there was a couch, and one said there was only a television on the ground. Regardless of the differences, they all confirmed that each texture they encountered, whether it was for walls or furniture, appeared to be photographs of the real thing. Aside from the differences of the textures, the layout and level progression remained the same. The first locked door was located in the upstairs bedroom furthest down the hall, and the second was the next bedroom next to it. The third was a door attached to the base of the staircase. Each time the player would have to select the key ring while standing next to the locked door. When a door was opened with the key ring, though, something would change when the player restarted. On the first playthrough, there's a distinct sound of wind when outside, and an audible low droning hum that takes the place of music once the player crosses through the front door. More than likely, the outdoor noise was recorded in the same way that the textures were taken from real-life sources. What is peculiar about the droning noise is that most players most likely wouldn't have noticed it if they'd played on computers dated to the release of the game, as supposedly it was at roughly the same frequency as the ambient hum made by old 2000s fans and hard drives. In the forum discussion, one user had been wearing headphones and noticed it, told the other users to try the same, and each confirmed that they had been hearing the same thing, and each of them had additionally reported auditory distortion for up to an hour after stopping. After taking off their headphones, players said their hearing had a noticeable warble in ambient noises around them, and this effect intensified with an increasingly painful headache depending on the amount of time spent listening to the first level's noise. After a period of an hour standing inside of the house, each forum user contacted had unanimously agreed that for a period of roughly 5 minutes, they could hear faint voices in the rooms next to them saying the beginnings and endings of unrecognizable words once they took their headphones off. When the first locked door, which had its own unique door texture, was reached and opened, the player would restart at the tree line once again and approach the house. This time, the same droning noise that was only present inside of the house would be present outside as well. When entering the house and moving to the upstairs hallway, a second door would appear with another texture, different from the other two. If the player was so inclined, they could open the first door again and enter a carpeted room with a large bed placed next to a window. It was clear that there was something visible outside of the window, but because of the large size of the bed, it was impossible to move close enough to see what that was. When moving to the second door in the upstairs hallway and selecting the key ring, the third and final level would begin. Upon the third restart, the outdoor noise is completely absent, and only the quiet humming remains, the same near inaudible volume. The third and final locked door with its own unique photo texture appears at the base of the staircase in the living room, visible after opening the front door. Any attempt to open it using the key ring yields no result. The door does not open like the other two, and the game cannot advance any further. At this point, the only actions the player could do are to move upstairs and visit the first room, which was the same, or opened and enter past the second room's door. In this room, there were 3 smaller beds, pushed against their respective walls. Just as in the first bedroom, there was a carpeted floor texture taken from a real-life photograph, and the walls, which shared the same textures as the living room. The only thing left to do at this point was to crash Abandoned House with the task manager or power the computer off, as there was no way of moving past the third and final door. According to a few of the more dedicated posters who had been experimenting with Abandoned House, an additional thread with a string of pictures was created by a user that has more or less disappeared, unable to be contacted regarding his discoveries. The pictures taken and posted were done with a camera pointed at the monitor, as he claimed the print screen function only captured the desktop background instead of the game's window. The user discovered the door states could be manipulated by using a hex editor on the second monitor with a video splitting device while the game was running. By comparing changes in the game's live code during level changes, he was able to see exactly what lines to change in order to gain access. What he found was that the new rooms were always present in each level. A door simply replaced the wall space and allowed access. All of the rooms, with the exception of one, the one no one had been able to reach, past the door in the staircase. It only appeared once the third level was reached. Using the editor after thorough research to find where the new code had appeared, he was able to remove the third door entirely, exposing an entry that had previously been impossible to see. Inside of the entryway was a staircase leading into the basement. Indeed, like everything else, the newest textures for the walls, floor, and ceiling were unique and taken from some real-life counterpart as well. At the very back of the basement was a crawl-space door, and this was, in fact, the third and actual final locked door. Using the keyring did not restart the game. Instead, the crawl-space door was pushed to the side, revealing a hole in which there was a texture of 5 corpses, pushed to the very back wall of this new room.